Florida federal judge Aileen Cannon, she's back. And at the request of the two co-conspirators with Donald Trump in the Mar-a-Lago case, has issued what she refers to as a temporary stay, an order that temporarily stays and blocks the ability for Jack Smith and Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, to publish to the American people the long-awaited 2-volume, over 500-page report that closes out the two prosecutions of Donald Trump in the Mar-a-Lago case and the D.C. election interference case. That's required by law to have been prepared by the special counsel and required by law on the interest of public justice and public interest to be published to the American people by the Attorney General. But Aileen Cannon has blocked it for now. There's a procedural issue here, has to do with an appeal. I'm going to break it all down for you right now on the MeidasTouch Network and on Legal AF. We got two incredibly fast-moving stories. I call them fast-breaking stories that we're tracking here on the MeidasTouch Network and Legal AF. Both today, both over the last 24 hours. One related to Donald Trump and his sentencing scheduled for Friday, with a series of emergency filings related to that and new orders that have come out. I've done separate hot takes on that. Here, I'm going to focus on the almost simultaneous, coordinated strategy of Donald Trump and his two co-conspirators, Walt Nauta and Carlos de Oliveira, the only two remaining defendants in the Mar-a-Lago case, because Donald Trump was already dismissed from that case on immunity grounds and Department of Justice guidelines a few weeks ago. But that issue as to whether Judge Aileen Cannon was right or wrong, I believe she was wrong, to dismiss the indictment against Donald Trump because she found that the special counsel was unconstitutionally appointed by the Attorney General, and he's unconstitutionally funded through a funding mechanism, and therefore the entire indictment should be thrown in the trash. That issue has been up with the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, her bosses that sit in Atlanta, for the last several months. And the special counsel is continuing to prosecute that appeal. He's lateraled it off to the U.S. Attorney's Office in Miami to continue with it because he's got to try hard to get that precedent ripped off the books. It's against the weight of 200 years of federal jurisprudential analysis and case law. He's got to get it off. So that case is up there. We've been waiting for the 11th Circuit to make its ruling. I predicted a week ago that one of the reasons that Jack Smith handed it off to the U.S. Attorney in Miami was to encourage, we sometimes do this in the law, encourage the appellate court to make their ruling already and make it certainly before the 20th of January. Well, we now know that they know that they're sitting on a decision because Donald Trump did two things. I mean, it's Walt Nauta and Carlos de Oliveira on the papers, but let's be honest, it's Donald Trump calling the shots. So he had his two henchmen filed two pieces of paper in two different courts. With Judge Cannon, he asked her to block the release of the report until the appellate process was done at the 11th Circuit. At the 11th Circuit, they filed at the same time an emergency application for an emergency stay from the appellate court. Sometimes it's easier to get a stay out of your trial judge than it is out of your appellate court. So they tried both mechanisms and both methods. Notice that they've completely ignored Judge Chutkan, who they know is not in their favor, and they're constantly aiming their request at Judge Cannon, who has bent over backwards to help the defense in Donald Trump. So they're not asking Chutkan to block anything. They're asking Aileen Cannon to do it. So she gets over across her desk, across the transom of the electronic filing, this emergency motion, 40 pages in length from Nauta and Carlos de Oliveira, basically claiming that, again, you've already ruled that the special counsel is unconstitutionally appointed. He wasn't confirmed by the Senate. The Attorney General doesn't have the power to appoint him as an inferior officer. You know, pages and pages of things that have really been rejected by every other court except for Aileen Cannon, and the very issues that are up at the 11th Circuit on appeal. And that he was improperly funded by Congress, and he spent $20 million that he wasn't supposed to spend, and just throw the indictment in the trash. I mean, it's that argument. And therefore, if you're going to throw the indictment in the trash, then his special report His special counsel report, which we've heard is 2 volumes in length, no surprise, and probably over 500 pages or more, probably with attachments, thousands of pages, that is invalid. That is an ultra vires or rogue act of an unconstitutionally appointed special counsel. You see where this is going? And therefore, that should be thrown in the trash as well. But don't let his report out. He was never valid to begin with. He was unconstitutionally appointed. So any fruit from that poisonous tree should just be discarded. That's the fundamentals of their argument. Now, Judge Cannon is not the one to make that argument to, because she's not really responsible for interfering with blocking a release of a special counsel report under federal law. But that's never stopped her violating the law, sticking her nose where it doesn't belong, interfering with the jurisdiction of the executive branch. Never stopped her before. She was reprimanded not once but twice by the 11th Circuit at the beginning of the case for interfering with the executive branch and the Department of Justice. So she's, this is par for the course. This is what she does. You have Aileen Cannon. This is what you're going to get. And that's what Donald Trump's been banking on. So what she did was she took a look at her piece of paper, knowing that there's an emergency application at the 11th Circuit asking for the same stay. And she's like, I'll help you out, 11th Circuit. I'll enter a temporary stay right now that stays in place until 3 days after the appellate court rules, just in case they don't give a stay. I think that's invalid. I think they should move to, if I was the Department of Justice, I would move to vacate this order and prove to the judge that she is wrong under the law, and that in this matter, in this instance, the only one who can issue any kind of stay would be the 11th Circuit, and even they are powerless. I mean, there's an argument here that the federal courts are not able, except because they'd be breaching separation of powers, they're not able to stop the release of the report under the statutes that govern the special counsel's work and the delivery of the report. Now, if you want to have the argument that maybe he was invalid and therefore his report is invalid, I think that's an 11th Circuit argument, not a Judge Cannon argument. Her stay should be lifted, and then it should be replaced, if anything, by the 11th Circuit stay. But we may, for right now, for this reporting's purposes, assume that the stay is going to be in place by Judge Cannon, stopping the release of the report. Now, what do we know about the special counsel's report? We know it's 2 volumes. We know it's in excess of 500 pages. Okay, we know it takes on Donald Trump for both Mar-a-Lago, his Espionage Act violations, and for what happened in the DC election interference case. We know that already. And we also know that it has been given to Donald Trump to review between January 3rd and January 6th, in person, in the special counsel's offices, without any kind of electronic devices or copying, equipment. The lawyers for Donald Trump, Todd Blanche included, got to look at the report and make recommendations. We know that Donald Trump didn't like what was in the report. That should not be a shock. And he prepared his own 15 or 18-page letter objecting to it, which has been filed. See how this is all coordinated, this ballet? Filed with Walt Nauta and Carlos de Oliveira's emergency applications. So it's already been published, right? The report is still sitting in a tank somewhere, right? Still sitting locked away. But the response to the report by Donald Trump, so he got the first words out in the news cycle, is already out there because they found a way to publish it. They sent a letter to Merrick Garland, but they attached it to the filing and they put it on the public docket. So we're talking about it, but we don't know what the 500 pages says. So Donald Trump accomplished one of his goals, which is to go first. Now, they didn't have to show it to Donald Trump, but they did. We can leave for another day the merits of having allowed him to participate in that process. I would not have. It's now with those special counsel reports, closeout memos required by law are now with Merrick Garland. They're arguing in their papers that he should throw them in the trash and not release them to the public because Jack Smith's unconstitutionally appointed and all sorts of, and presidential immunity. He shouldn't have to sit through and read this stuff while he's president, whatever else they argued. Now, Jack Smith told Aileen Cannon in his filing before she made her order, which I'm going to read from in a minute, that this report was not going to be released to the public any earlier than Friday to give everybody enough time to brief it and to get oral argument done and to get, I guess, some sort of ruling out of the 11th Circuit. So here's what Judge Cannon did just a few minutes ago. I'll read it to you. It's very short. Before this court is an emergency motion filed on Jan 6 by Waltine Nauta and Carlos de Oliveira to preclude release of final report by Special Counsel Jack Smith. It seeks a ruling by January 10th on Friday and contains an appropriate certification requesting a hearing. The emergency motion filed to preserve the status quo seeks immediate adjunctive relief to prevent irreparable injury from the reported imminent release to the public of a final report by Jack Smith. This morning, defendants filed a nearly identical emergency motion with the 11th Circuit in a pending appeal by the special counsel on an order granting defendants' motion to dismiss. That's her order finding that Jack Smith is a figment of our imagination. The appellate motion seeks specific relief in the form of a stay, along with an order remanding back to this court and consideration of the legality of any public release of the final report. To preserve the status quo, as this court awaits resolution by the 11th Circuit, and to prevent irreparable harm, it is ordered and adjudged as follows. 1, pending resolution of the emergency motion filed with the 11th Circuit, the appellate court, under and or any further direction from the 11th Circuit, Attorney General Garland, the Department of Justice, Special Counsel Smith, all other officers are temporarily enjoined from releasing, sharing, or transmitting the final report or any drafts of such report outside the Department of Justice, or otherwise releasing, distributing, conveying, or sharing with anyone outside the Department of Justice any information or conclusions in the final report or in the drafts. In other words, no leaks. This order remains in effect 3 days until 3 days after the resolution by the 11th Circuit of the emergency motion. She also instructed Nauta and Oliveira to file, to give notice of this order and give it to the clerk of the 11th Circuit, give it to Jack Smith, and give it to everybody else. And it was just signed in chambers just today. Now, interesting. The next time you see me talking about this, it's going to be when the 11th Circuit decides whether they're going to issue a stay or they're just going to surf behind this stay. I mean, technically, they wouldn't have to issue their own stay now because Judge Cannon just gave them breathing room with her stay. But I think we're going to get this decision. I think it's going to be against Aileen Cannon. I've said it before. I'll say it again. She was wrong from a constitutional analysis standpoint in every way, shape, and form to dismiss the indictment and to find the special counsel was invalid and unconstitutionally appointed. The same way every special counsel for the last 200 years has ever been appointed. So I think she loses at the 11th Circuit. I think they lift the stay. And since the only real argument is that the Jack Smith's reports are unconstitutionally invalid because he's unconstitutionally invalid, since that'll fall by the wayside if the 11th Circuit rules, I think we see the reports. Now, here's the one fly in the ointment. The 11th Circuit doesn't wear a watch, doesn't see how late it is in the day, doesn't realize that the 20th of January would come. And if the 20th of January comes and the 11th Circuit hasn't ruled and hasn't lifted this stay, we're not going to get these reports. Because on the minute one of Donald Trump's presidency, among all the other things he's going to do, he's going to pardon Walt Nauta and Carlos de Oliveira, meaning the 11th Circuit appeal will die because there won't be any parties to it. Donald Trump will make the 11th Circuit appeal moot and a exercise in an advisory opinion, which courts don't do, because he's going to take out the two remaining defendants. So that without a case, without a parties, there's no case. Without a case, there's no ruling. So the 11th Circuit's got to be aware of that. That if they wait too long, unless that's what they want to do, if they want to benefit Donald Trump, and so far the 11th Circuit has not bent over backwards to help him, but if they want to benefit him, they just sit on this until the 20th, and then there's nothing to rule on. And this stay stays in place forever. And then once the 20th rolls around, Merrick Garland's out of a job, Jack Smith is long out of a job, and the new attorney general or acting attorney general is going to kill this entire report. It's got to happen now. That's why we're reporting on it with such fast-breaking news right here on MeidasTouch Network and Legal AF. I'm going to do a whole overview tonight, 8 p.m., live, Popok live on MeidasTouch Network. I'm going to get you updated about everything that was fast-moving today about Donald Trump's sentencing scheduled for Friday and all the emergency applications flying around related to that. And on this particular matter and other matters as well that have all accumulated this week that we got to do Popok live. So until my next reporting, I'm Michael Popok.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Meidas by signing up to the MeidasTouch newsletter at MeidasTouch.com/newsletter.